the slavery time, but I know how it feels to be a slave.
How would you gauge the level of fear on these camps?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say about 9.5.
This week, CNN presents Faces of Slavery.
Shine on me.
They buy you and they sell you, just like slaves. A guy could take you to another camp, a guy could pay him for you, and you're stuck there.
It's a world where the people who picked the food that ends up on your table can become virtual slaves. And it's happening to hundreds upon hundreds of U.S. citizens today.
I wasn't born in the slavery time, but I know how it feels to be a slave.
It all starts in the shadows of the shimmering skylines of the New South. In the heart of cities like Atlanta, crew bosses who serve as middlemen to hire help for farmers work the crowd. They target the homeless and the down and out with the promise of work, women, and a drug that binds, crack cocaine.
George Smith was an easy catch. The bright young man with a promising future had lost his job and his marriage, drifting into addiction, surviving in the streets.
There was a church called Trinity's in Atlanta. We go down there every Sunday to eat. And the guy named Willie Barnes Jr., he pulled up there in a van, and he offered me and two other friends a job. And he told us about how we could make $300 a week and had shelter and food and everything. And to a homeless person, that's a lot of money, and it sounds like a good opportunity. I came here with nothing, and I left here with nothing.
From the streets of Atlanta, George Smith ended up here at an isolated camp in eastern North Carolina.
This was the camp that we stayed on when we were here picking potatoes.
There was a summer of picking and not a dime to show. It's an old trap called the company store. Crew leaders offer workers everything from snacks and cigarettes to alcohol, drugs, and women, and charge them exorbitant rates. Whatever they purchase is counted against their earnings. So instead of getting a weekly paycheck, George Smith got a weekly statement of debt. Debt fabricated by a gun-toting crew leader.
The only thing they would give you is a stub to sign saying you owe us this much. And you can't argue with, who's gonna argue with a man with a shotgun? And they had dogs stationed at the end of the building here.
Smith and his fellow workers were confined like prisoners and told they could not leave until they worked off their debt.
The time I spent here, I might as well have been in the federal or the state penitentiary, because that's what it was. The only thing is, I was in a prison for doing nothing.
What is most chilling is that this example of modern-day bondage is far from unique. The faces of slavery could belong to someone you know.
Civil War was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. We talk about it every day in the field, you know what I mean? We got to get away from here.
And he just picked up the pipe and came to me with it and told me what he was going to do to me. Said he'll find me out there in the field somewhere.
Do you consider it slavery?
I think slavery would have been a little better than that. Be honest with you. Be honest, I really think so.
Ironically, it is U.S. citizens, not immigrants, who are more often exploited. They are generally people of color, recruited by black labor bosses who run remote and decrepit camps far from the fields in conditions little different than what their ancestors endured.
I'm talking about Americans that are being worked long hours in the hot sun and get no pay, and then have to live in totally unacceptable conditions by anybody's standards.
Maxine Miller documents the abuse of migrant workers at a small Catholic mission in Augusta, Georgia.
These are the ones that have just been here since March of this year, asking for our help to get back home.
This is the Underground Railroad, where in just 3 days this summer, we witnessed a steady stream of shaken migrant workers who had fled the fields, many fearing for their lives.
I don't know how much.
Clarence Boyd was advised by a fellow worker to run, but not to turn to the law.
He told me to don't go to the police.
Why did he tell you not to go to the
He's
police?
telling the police to bring you back. I'll bring you back. That's what he said. I said, it's the law. He said, you just don't know. He said, just do like I tell you, and you get away. And I got away.
Boyd is one of the lucky ones, lucky to locate a rare safe haven where he is given a meal for the road and a bus ticket home. How would you gauge the level of fear on these camps?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say about 9.5.
The intimidation is often physical, inflicted on people who are difficult, if not impossible, to trace. Even crew leaders well known for repeatedly breaking the law resurface season after season. It goes on and on because evidence of slavery, brutality, and criminal activity, including drug trafficking, does not appear to be on the high priority list of the authorities in a position to clean up these camps. Indeed, law enforcement agencies we contacted for this report, from the FBI in Washington to the sheriff in the heart of South Carolina's Peach Country, refused to discuss the issue of migrant workers with CNN.
Sheriff?
The fact is, most government agencies, for whatever reason, don't even know where to start.
The biggest frustration is not knowing where the problems are. They don't put the migrant housing in front of the farmer's house on the highway. It's back 2 fields over, and we don't have helicopters. We don't have aerial surveillance.
Legal services, and I'm here to help you guys.
In a camp in Chesney, South Carolina, these men found themselves trapped after being recruited to pick peaches.
I'm
ready to go. He's ready to go. Him. He said he's ready to go.
I heard.
So we need some help.
Okay.
A young woman working with a legal services agency came to their aid in a late-night rescue.
There's nobody that can keep them on this camp. There's no reason that they have to stay here.
Right.
It doesn't matter who they owe money to. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It's against the law to hold somebody against their will.
Right.
And nobody has the right to do that.
Right.
The crew leader had slipped away, but his cronies made their presence known. Several workers took their chances, gathered their belongings, and rode off into freedom.
You know, who do these people think they are?
We decided to track the pattern firsthand by sending 2 CNN producers dressed as drifters and rigged with a hidden camera to stake out a city park in Raleigh, North Carolina. In just a matter of minutes, they were approached by a man offering work.
What kind of work you got?
Taters.
Taters?
Yeah, pick up taters.
All right. How much you gonna be paying? What do you pay?
40 cents a bucket.
Joe Jones, the elderly labor boss, did not ensure them minimum wage or produce a written statement of work conditions as required by law, nor did he promise ever to bring them back.
How many days? You can bring us back, or?
No.
Even so, our undercover crew piled into his rickety station wagon, departing North Carolina's capital city for a trip that would take them into America's third world. After hours of digging in the hot soil...
What is it?
No. Now go down there now.
I just asked him what that is.
A sink full of pig ears for dinner.
Huh?
Your business. No business.
No.
Living quarters littered with drugs and debris.
Right here is a crack pipe. There's lots of these pipes around here.
And scenes inside the camp And out, more suggestive of life in Haiti than in the USA.
I know I didn't do it.
Joe Jones has no license to operate as a labor contractor, no license to drive a car.
This is an identification card. It's not a driver's license.
I told you what I told you.
You don't have a driver's license.
I told him I didn't.
When we asked Labor Department officials about Joe Jones, they told us they put him out of business years ago for numerous violations of federal labor law.
They were stunned to learn what our own investigation had uncovered and wanted to know where they could catch up with the man who still routinely recruits and then rounds up workers from the fields, often driving them for miles to and from the camp. And when we later confronted Jones with what our hidden camera captured, he denied there are drugs in his camp.
The workers came to you for drugs.
No.
But in nearly every case we examined, through the course of dozens of interviews, the migrants we spoke with consistently detailed a ready supply of crack cocaine on the camps, made available and encouraged by the crew leaders.
Sun up to sundown, 93, 94 degrees.
Back-breaking every day, back-breaking. You fill these bins up. You pound it every day with a 45-pound sack of peaches.
After just a week on the job at this farm in Trenton, South Carolina, these two men, recruited off the street in Orlando, Florida, realized they would not get what they had been promised.
No money, nothing.
No credit for the work you've done.
None.
And you end up with this manufactured debt.
Yeah. And it's manufactured, like I was showing you here, written in the hours, 17 hours on your pay stub. Not like this here computerized. This written in by ink.
And that says 17 and a half hours, when in fact you worked how much?
I worked at least 45, at least, if he takes something away.
We took their altered pay stubs back to the owner of the farm, a man who has been fined repeatedly by the U.S. Labor Department for using crew leaders who lacked the proper credentials.
At the end of the week, everything is computerized except for his hours, which are written in by hand. He says, both of these men say, they left here without a dime.
Well, I don't believe that's true. Of course, you take the word of the migrant, but I don't believe that's true, no.
Mr. Holmes, I'm simply stating to you what people who worked on your farm told us.
Yes, ma'am, you're talking about 2 people out of 200. 2 people out of 200. If I treated people like that, I don't believe the other 200 would be out here working.
It matters not whether mistreatment comes at the hands of the landowner or the crew leader. Under the law, it is the farmer who bears ultimate responsibility for seeing that the workers are paid.
Well, let's talk about a revolutionary concept, Mr. Farmer. How about write each worker a check with the worker's name on it, and then at the end of the year, you, Mr. Farmer, give that worker a W-2 form, you pay in his Social Security, you give him everything the law requires. You see that unemployment compensation taxes are paid on his work. What an unusual concept.
Of course, not all farmers who use migrant workers are at fault, and many who've had problems in the past have changed the way they do business. Those who own and operate labor camps on their property and pay workers directly are less likely to run into trouble.
We cut every one of them a check. We don't pay the crew leader, and that's about where some problems have been in the past, is paying a crew leader and the crew leader ripping them off.
In 1983, Congress passed the Migrant and Seasonal Agricultural Worker Protection Act. It's designed to level criminal charges against farmers and crew leaders who practice peonage, a form of slavery that holds people against their will while they pay off debt. But more than a decade later, despite ample evidence of widespread abuse, the law has resulted in only a handful of convictions.
We have to empower these workers. We've got to allow them to unionize. We've got to make sure that liability goes directly to the growers as well as the contractors.
The reality is that growers and the agricultural industry have a tremendous amount of political power. And ultimately, I think a lot of these questions go back to political power. Migrant farm workers have next to no political power.
Which brings us back to the story of George Smith. He escaped in a harrowing journey by foot, running for a day and a half until he reached civilization in Raleigh. Then he did what many migrants are reluctant to do. He blew the whistle.
I said to myself, I got kids. I don't ever want anybody to do to my kids what they did to me. And if it's any kind of way, if I can voice my opinion, I'll stand on the steps, I'll stand on the state capitol and say what I have to say. Because nobody should ever be treated like that, period.
The case went to federal court, and Willie Bonds Jr., the man who ran the camp, was indicted for peonage, a form of slavery that holds people against their will while they work off debt. Ultimately, he was convicted on lesser criminal charges and is now serving time in the federal pen. He refuses to discuss the case with CNN. Bond's father and co-conspirator was also recently sentenced to 6 months in prison for similar violations. As for George Smith, he has remarried, has a steady job, and a new baby daughter.
Can you do mine?
And he got a portion of his back pay from his summer as a migrant worker in a recent court settlement. But not far away from the squalid farm shacks in the shadows of a southern sunset, the cycle of slavery endures. 130 years since the end of the Civil War.
It is sad to know that here, right here, near Augusta, this is happening tonight. This is happening right now. There are crews that are still out in the fields working that will not get a dime for working today. But somebody got paid for it.